with these geopolitical tensions, Asia has been able to have a nice balancing act, be somewhat neutral between US and China, but I suspect that's going to be increasingly difficult. And especially in a world where maybe technology is going to be split between US chips and China chips. How do you see Asia playing a role in all this, and will it be able to maintain this balancing act going forward?
Now, in the end, we go back to basics. Our children were brought up. Our families intact. Are they studying? Are they acquiring knowledge? Are they saving? Are they lazy? I mean, go back to basics. Governments grow out of culture. There's information warfare against China. Yes, China faces a lot of problems. They punctured the real estate sector, and you take them years to sort it out, but they put a bottom to it because it's on everybody's balance sheet and they can't afford for it to implode. I think the real estate sector in China has bottomed out. I mean, there'll still be scares here and there, but by and large it's bottomed out. But it will not go back to the go-go years of the past, not for many years, if ever. Is China in trouble? I don't think so. I mean, look at the factories, look at the EVs. Look at how terrified the Europeans are, accusing China of having overcapacity. I mean, how can you blame China for overcapacity when you're taking liberties with yourself, having long summers and working short hours? And you say, no, you are working too hard. There are consequences. And if families take liberties with their children or with themselves, there are consequences. So if you look at Asia, look at China, look at Southeast Asia, look at India. There are people who are hardworking, who obsess over their children, who want to have of them a higher education, who will scream in order that their kids will have a better education, better health, a better life. In the end, the governments will sort themselves out, and they'll do well. And we're lucky to be in the part of the world where strange values have not taken over our societies. I mean, let's ask ourselves, 19th century, Qing Dynasty China, the opium problem. I mean, of course, it is the evil of the West, selling opium to China. But why was there a market? Why was there a market that insisted on opium to drug pain and suffering? Why is America such a big market for drugs today? And I was watching the Eurovision contest in clips of it. I mean, the big issue was how the Israeli contestant was being booed and so on. It was very unfair to her, but I mean, that's politics. But parts of it, almost satanic. But it's now part of the fashion, the morals of Europe. What is happening? PM Lee talked about how we should keep all these woke things away from us as much as possible. I fully agree with him. Keep our societies wholesome. Keep our families intact. I mean, AI is very important, but AI cannot answer moral questions for us. In the end, it's every individual, every child who must make the choice. Be immersed in technology, make use of it, but have our own sense of what it means to be a human being. So if we use that as a template to judge human society, I say we are very lucky to be in a part of the world where societies, by and large, are wholesome and will do well. But of course, if there's war, then everything gets upset. So there must be an overriding desire and mission to keep the peace in the region, to keep conflicts within bounds.
How do you see the bloc of ASEAN? Is it getting stronger or is it challenging?
I think ASEAN will be okay. ASEAN is not held together by love, it is held together by fear. Because even if you're Indonesia, you know that others are much bigger. And if we don't stick together, we'll be balkanized. And instead of becoming neighbors, we become clients of big powers. Instead of using them, they make use of us. That's always the threat. Look at the Philippines now. The Philippines have legitimate disputes with China. Both sides have their cases. The Americans see an opportunity there and jump in. They bring in the Japanese. And now Philippine politics is caught up in this. Can an accident happen? Yes. Will it lead to war? I doubt it. Because in the end, interests will assert themselves. And the business community in the Philippines, which has a strong Chinese component, they don't like what they're seeing. And below the emotions, the Filipinos know that in the end, they need economic development. And to some extent, if the Americans are somewhere, they strengthen their negotiating position with China. So China must manage this skillfully, understanding the domestic politics, understanding that deep inside, the Filipinos are pro-American. I remember when the Filipinos asked the Americans to leave Clark and Subic base. They said, GI, go home, but bring me along with you. So this is the Philippines as it is. So China must work with it and find a way to save face. I mean, they had an agreement, a gentleman's agreement with Duterte, which Marcos has repudiated. So, okay. So they must find a new way to equilibrate and make use of the Americans and not be made use of by the Americans. But that's very difficult. When you try to make use of a big power, you end up being made use of by them. So Singapore has learned that lesson. We are very careful. Then look at Vietnam. Vietnam has made a very important decision to go with China. It was not well reported, but Vietnam has agreed that Hanoi will be linked to Kunming and Nanning by high-speed rail. This is big, because each connection is tens of billions of dollars and will change the topological configuration of logistics and supply chain and human movement for decades to come. The Vietnamese held back this decision for a long time, but they're cracking down on corruption. China is now an inspiration to the General Secretary, but he's having one hell of a fight in Vietnam. But I think in the end, they have no choice. Because if the Communist Party is termite-ridden, there's no hope for Vietnam. They know it. And they didn't fight the French and Americans for nothing. And just this month, just maybe today, I think, they are celebrating the 70th anniversary of their victory over the French in Dien Bien Phu. Generations died to secure the independence. They are not going to throw it all away by allowing corrupt officials to take over the country. And they're watching China and the way it's going. So they will take that same route. Indonesia, Prabowo, first visit to China. People scratch their heads. Why did he do that? And when he met, it was Xiao Ti talking to Taka, little brother talking to big brother. But when he went to Japan, then it's brother talking to brother. But don't be mistaken, because Southeast Asians have seen China in early incarnations. They know the Chinese like all these things. So when they go to China, they will bow and they will scrape and so on. But it doesn't mean that they are servile inside. And if interests are involved, they will assert themselves, as we see in the Philippines. But it's part of Li, it's part of the ritual of relations with China. And you look at the other countries, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Brunei. No one wants China to be an enemy. And the Americans don't understand this yet. That because China is getting bigger and bigger for us, all of us want the Americans to be in the room. But if the Americans say, no, you have to choose between China and us, then we say, no, we can't. How can we choose? I mean, China is where our side of the bread is buttered, But if they don't ask us to choose, then every door, every window is open to the Americans. And they will not have to pay a cent. I think eventually they will come to this realization. The Europeans and Japanese already know it. But it will take time. And this is a transition that unfortunately we have to go through.